The massive chamber on Kepler Station hummed with tension as representatives from 12 alien civilizations sat in their designated zones. Each species had claimed their territory in the circular hall according to ancient protocols that predated human spaceflight by thousands of years. The air recyclers worked overtime to accommodate the different atmospheric needs of beings who had never intended to share the same space with creatures like humans. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the human delegation table wearing his crisp Earth Defense Fleet uniform. His weathered face showed no emotion as he watched the alien counselors whisper among themselves in languages that sounded like grinding metal and chittering insects. Beside him, diplomat Lisa Rodriguez shuffled through her notes one final time. She had spent 3 years learning the basics of Galactic Standard and Council protocols, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. The Zenthari High Counselor Veltar rose from his floating platform. His elongated skull gleamed under the chamber lights, and his 4 arms gestured with practiced authority. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of a civilization that had ruled star systems before humans discovered fire. "The matter before this council is simple," Veltar announced. "The species known as humans has expanded beyond acceptable parameters. In merely 2 centuries, they have established 47 colonies across 17 sectors. This rate of growth threatens the stability of established territories and violates the principle of controlled expansion that has maintained galactic peace for millennia." Jake felt his jaw tighten but kept his expression neutral. 2 centuries of human expansion seemed like a blink of an eye to him, but these beings measured time in geological epochs. What humanity saw as natural growth, they viewed as an aggressive invasion. The Osean delegate Thisica spoke next. Her crystalline form pulsed with cold blue light as she accessed data files that appeared as holographic displays around her station. "Human colonies have been established within proximity zones of 7 council member territories. Their mining operations have depleted resources in the Vega sector. Their military vessels patrol space lanes without proper authorization. Most concerning, their rate of technological advancement suggests they will pose a direct threat to Council authority within 50 standard years." Lisa Rodriguez requested permission to speak. The Council's translation matrix carried her words to all present, though she knew the subtle meanings would be lost. "Honored counselors, humanity has followed all established protocols for colonial expansion. Our settlements have remained within unoccupied systems. We have not interfered with any council member's sovereign territory. Our growth may seem rapid, but it is driven by necessity. Earth's population exceeds optimal capacity, and our people need room to thrive." The insectoid Vexahai representative clicked its mandibles in what the translation system rendered as derisive laughter. "Necessity is the excuse of every aggressive species. The Davari made similar claims before they were contained. The Kethalos used identical reasoning before their expansion was halted. Humans are no different from any other young race that believes the galaxy exists for their benefit." Jake stepped forward. "With respect, Counselor, humans are different. We adapt, we survive. We find solutions where others see only problems. Every world we have settled was barren or uninhabitable when we arrived. We terraformed dead rocks into garden worlds. We didn't take anything from anyone." Veltar's 4 eyes focused on Jake with obvious contempt. "Captain Morrison, your species' talent for survival is precisely what concerns this council. Young races that adapt too quickly become threats to the established order. The galaxy has enjoyed 12,000 years of peace under council guidance. We will not allow human ambition to destabilize that peace." The crystalline Mordun delegate spoke for the first time, its voice like wind chimes in a storm. "The Council has reviewed humanity's expansion patterns. Analysis indicates that at current growth rates, human territory will overlap with 3 Council member zones within 100 years. This is unacceptable. Controlled species must accept limitations for the greater good." Lisa felt her diplomatic training warring with her human instincts. If territory is the concern, surely we can negotiate boundary agreements. Humanity is willing to discuss reasonable restrictions on future expansion. We seek coexistence, not conflict. Coexistence requires acceptance of hierarchy, Thysica replied. Humans have demonstrated repeated unwillingness to acknowledge council authority. Your vessels ignore our patrol routes. Your colonies refuse to adopt standard governance protocols. Your people practice customs that violate established social harmonies. You are too chaotic to exist freely among civilized species. The Vexhai clicked again. The Council has reached its decision. Humanity will immediately cease all colonial expansion beyond the Sol system. All existing colonies will be abandoned within 72 standard hours. Human vessels will withdraw to Earth's orbital space and remain there under Council supervision. Any resistance to these terms will result in the complete sterilization of all human settlements and Earth itself. Jake felt the blood drain from his face. You're demanding that we abandon 47 worlds and over 300 million colonists. That's impossible. Even if we could move that many people, where would they go? Earth cannot support that population. That is a human problem, requiring a human solution, Veltar said coldly. The Council's patience with your species has reached its limit. You have exactly 72 hours to comply. After that deadline, our combined fleets will begin systematic destruction of every human presence beyond Sol. Lisa tried one last diplomatic approach. Surely there must be room for negotiation. Humanity has contributed to galactic civilization. Our medical research has saved millions of Council citizens. Our agricultural techniques have improved food production on 12 worlds. Our exploration data has opened new trade routes. We are valuable allies, not enemies. The Morden delegate's crystalline structure darkened. Young species always believe they are indispensable. The galaxy functioned perfectly for millennia before humans left their homeworld. It will continue to function after they return to it. The Council's decision is final. Thysica activated a holographic display showing the positions of Council fleets. To demonstrate our resolve, observe the current deployment of forces. The Zenthari Armada, 50 million vessels. The Osean Defense Fleet, 32 million ships. Combined Council forces total 173 million armed vessels. Humanity possesses approximately 200,000 military ships. The mathematical outcome of any conflict is obvious. Jake stared at the display, his military mind automatically calculating impossible odds. Even if every human ship fought perfectly, they would be outnumbered by nearly 1,000 to 1. It wasn't a war humanity could win through conventional means. We need time to consider your terms, Lisa said quietly. You have 72 hours, Veltar replied. Use them wisely. When the deadline passes, the Council will demonstrate why 12,000 years of peace has been maintained through strength, not sentiment. This session is concluded. As the alien delegates began filing out of the chamber, Jake and Lisa remained standing at their table. The weight of impossibility pressed down on them like a collapsing star. Behind them, Earth waited for news of the negotiations that were supposed to secure humanity's future among the stars. Instead, they had just learned that humanity had 3 days to disappear. The emergency session in the White House Situation Room lasted 18 hours. President Maria Santos sat at the head of the table surrounded by her most trusted advisors, military commanders, and colonial administrators. The holographic displays showed real-time data from every human settlement across 47 worlds, each one representing millions of lives that hung in the balance. Admiral Tony Blake spread tactical projections across the central display. His scarred hands moved through the data with practiced efficiency as he outlined humanity's military position. The numbers don't lie, Madam President. We have 200,000 ships total. The Council is deploying 173 million vessels. Even if we achieved perfect kill ratios, which is impossible, we would be wiped out in the first engagement. Secretary of Defense Janet Murphy studied the deployment patterns. What about asymmetric warfare? Hit-and-run tactics? We could make them pay for every system. And then what? Blake replied grimly. They glass Earth with their remaining 170 million ships? We might take out a few million of theirs, but it would be a Pyrrhic victory that ends with human extinction. President Santos turned to Colonial Administrator Paul Richardson. What about evacuation? Can we realistically move 300 million colonists back to Earth in 72 hours? Richardson shook his head. Impossible, ma'am. Our largest transport ships can carry 50,000 people each. We would need 6,000 ships making continuous runs, and that assumes perfect coordination and no technical failures. We have maybe 800 suitable vessels, and most are scattered across different sectors. Dr. Amanda Clark, head of the Science Division, looked up from her tablet. Even if we could move everyone, Earth cannot support that population. We are already at maximum sustainable capacity. Adding 300 million people would trigger ecological collapse within months. The room fell silent as the weight of impossible choices settled over them. Every option led to massive loss of human life, either through abandonment, starvation, or outright annihilation. President Santos stood and walked to the window overlooking the rose garden. Outside, normal life continued. People walked their dogs, children played, and tourists took pictures. None of them knew that humanity faced extinction in less than 3 days. There is another option, she said quietly. Complete withdrawal. Admiral Blake frowned. Ma'am, we just established that evacuation is impossible. Not to Earth, Santos replied, turning back to face the room. Beyond the galactic rim, into dark space. The suggestion created an immediate uproar. Military advisors argued about supply, lines, and logistics. Scientists worried about navigating without stellar reference points. Colonial administrators calculated the massive undertaking of moving entire civilizations. Dr. Clark was the first to speak coherently. Madam President, deep space colonization beyond the galaxy would be incredibly dangerous. We would be cutting ourselves off from all established infrastructure, supply chains, and communication networks. It would essentially be exile. Better exile than extinction, Santos replied. The Council expects us to either submit completely or fight a hopeless war. They are not prepared for a third option. If humanity disappears entirely, they get what they want without having to fire a shot. Colonel Ryan Phillips, head of colonial operations, began accessing star charts. The logistics would be unprecedented. We would need to evacuate not just people, but entire industrial bases, research facilities, genetic banks, cultural archives. Essentially, we would be taking human civilization with us. Can it be done? Santos asked. Phillips studied the data for several minutes before responding. Theoretically, yes. We have the ships to move critical personnel and equipment. The real challenge would be choosing what to take and what to leave behind. Every decision would shape the future of our species. Admiral Blake highlighted areas beyond the galactic rim. There are star systems in the void between galaxies. Rogue stars, brown dwarfs, ancient systems ejected by galactic collisions. The journey would take months, maybe years, but human technology could make it possible. Dr. Clark began calculating resource requirements. We would need to prioritize genetic diversity, technological knowledge, and manufacturing capability, food production, medical supplies, educational materials. It would be like planning for a generation ship voyage, except we are taking hundreds of ships instead of one. Secretary Murphy raised the obvious concern. What about security? We would be completely vulnerable during the evacuation. If the Council realizes what we are doing before we finish, they could destroy the fleeing ships. That is why we make it look like submission, Santos said. We publicly announce compliance with Council demands. We begin visible evacuation procedures toward Earth. Meanwhile, we secretly prepare the deep space expedition. By the time they realize we are not coming to Earth, the bulk of our people will be beyond their reach. Richardson began outlining the deception plan. We could use cargo ships disguised as civilian transports, stage the evacuation in phases, making it appear like standard compliance procedures. The Council will be monitoring our major shipping lanes, but they probably will not track every small vessel movement. Admiral Blake highlighted potential routes. We have exploration data for several systems beyond the rim. Survey teams found at least 12 star systems with potentially habitable worlds. They are far from ideal, but they could support human life with appropriate technology. Dr. Clark raised another critical point. We need to consider what we leave behind. Our research facilities contain decades of scientific advancement. If we abandon everything, the Council races will have access to human technology. Then we do not abandon it, Santos said firmly. We destroy what we cannot take. Every research station, every manufacturing facility, every piece of technology that could benefit them gets wiped clean. If they want human territory, they can have empty worlds. Colonel Phillips began drafting operational parameters. Operation Silent Exodus, Phase 1. Public compliance announcements and visible preparation for Earth evacuation. Phase 2. Covert preparation of deep space vessels and resource allocation. Phase 3. Systematic destruction of abandoned facilities and departure for dark space. Timeline: 60 hours to avoid the Council deadline. The room buzzed with activity as staff members began coordinating the largest logistical operation in human history. Transportation schedules, resource inventories, personnel assignments, and demolition protocols filled the displays around the room. President Santos addressed the room one final time. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to make a decision that will define humanity for generations. We can submit to alien authority and hope for mercy we probably will not receive. We can fight a war we cannot win and ensure our extinction. Or we can disappear into the darkness and forge our own destiny among the stars. She paused, looking at each advisor in turn. In 72 hours, the Council expects to find humanity broken and submissive. Instead, they will find empty worlds and the echo of a species that refused to kneel. The question is not whether we can survive in dark space. The question is what kind of civilization we will become when we are no longer constrained by their rules. Admiral Blake stood at attention. Madam President, the military is ready to execute Operation Silent Exodus on your command. Santos nodded. Then let us begin. Contact every colonial governor, every ship captain, every research station commander. Tell them that humanity is going home, but home is no longer in this galaxy. Within hours, the greatest migration in human history began. In absolute silence. 5 years had passed since the humans vanished into the void beyond the galactic rim. The Council worlds had settled into a comfortable routine of dividing former human territories among themselves. The Zenthari claimed the mineral-rich systems in the Vega sector, while the Oseans took control of the agricultural worlds that had fed millions of human colonists. The insectoid Vexhi established breeding colonies on planets that humans had terraformed from barren rocks into garden worlds. Dr. Elena Vasquez walked through the abandoned research complex on New Texas, her footsteps echoing in the empty corridors. The humans had been thorough in their evacuation. Most equipment was gone, and what remained had been deliberately destroyed. But Elena was not looking for salvageable technology. As a xenoarchaeologist working for the Council, she was documenting the remnants of human civilization for historical records. The research station had been one of humanity's most advanced facilities, focusing on deep space exploration and exotic physics. Elena's job was to catalog what the humans had been studying before their departure. The Council wanted to understand how such a young species had developed faster-than-light travel and terraforming technology in mere centuries. She entered what appeared to be a data storage room. Banks of servers lined the walls, but their memory cores had been wiped clean. Elena ran her scanner over the empty drives, hoping to find some trace of recoverable information. The humans had been careful, but sometimes data fragments survived, even the most thorough deletion procedures. Her scanner picked up something unusual. A section of the floor showed different material composition than the surrounding area. Elena knelt down and examined the anomaly more closely. The flooring here was newer, installed recently before the evacuation. Someone had hidden something beneath the surface. Using a molecular cutter from her equipment kit, Elena carefully removed the floor panels. Underneath, she found a sealed data cylinder that had been designed to survive even direct nuclear bombardment. The cylinder was marked with symbols that her translation software identified as warning signs in human script. Elena connected the cylinder to her portable reader. The data began flowing across her screen in formats that took several minutes for her equipment to decode. What she saw made her blood run cold. The files contained detailed observations of massive energy signatures moving through the dark space between galaxies. Human deep space probes had detected something that their scientists called the Devourers, mechanical entities of enormous size that appeared to consume entire star systems for raw materials. The data showed tracking information spanning decades, indicating that these entities moved in patterns consistent with galactic-scale harvesting operations. According to the human research, the Devourers operated on cycles lasting millions of years. They would strip one galaxy clean of useful matter, then move to the next. The pattern suggested they had already consumed dozens of galaxies throughout the local cluster. The Milky Way was simply next in their predetermined sequence. Elena scrolled through astronomical data that showed the entity's approach vector. The humans had calculated that the Devourers would reach the outer edges of the galaxy within 10 to 15 years of when the data was recorded. That meant they could arrive at any time now. More disturbing were the tactical analyses. Human military strategists had studied the entity's technology and operational methods. The Devourers used fleets of ships larger than moons, equipped with weapons that could crack planets and harvest their cores within hours. Their numbers were estimated in the hundreds of millions, possibly billions. The files contained detailed recommendations for defense strategies. Human tacticians had identified weaknesses in the entity's systematic approach and developed asymmetric warfare plans designed to exploit those vulnerabilities. But the plans required coordination between multiple species and technological capabilities that no single race possessed. Elena found communication logs showing that human scientists had tried to warn the Council about the approaching threat. The warnings had been submitted through proper diplomatic channels 2 years before the ultimatum was issued. The Council had dismissed the reports as human propaganda designed to justify their aggressive expansion and military buildup. Captain Steve Martinez commanded the Council enforcement vessel that patrolled the former human sectors. Elena transmitted her findings to his ship, requesting immediate priority communication with Council headquarters. Martinez reviewed the data files with growing alarm. "This cannot be accurate," Martinez told Elena during their video conference. "The Council's deep space monitoring systems would have detected threats of this magnitude. Our sensor networks extend far beyond the galactic rim." Elena highlighted specific sections of the human data. "Captain, look at these energy signatures. The humans were using detection methods that our species never developed. They were scanning for gravitational anomalies and exotic particle emissions that our sensors do not even recognize. We have been looking for the wrong things." Martinez forwarded the files to his superiors, but the response was predictably dismissive. The current Council leadership consisted of beings who had risen to power after the human exodus. They had built their careers on the success of containing the human threat, and were not inclined to validate warnings from the vanished species. High Counselor Zenthal considers this discovery to be fabricated human propaganda, Martinez reported back to Elena. The Council maintains that humans created these files as part of a psychological warfare campaign designed to create fear and dependency. They believe the warnings were intended to make the Council races feel they needed human protection. Elena stared at the data streaming across her screens. The mathematical models were too sophisticated to be fabrications, and the astronomical observations contained details that could be verified by independent sources. Captain, we need to send verification probes to the coordinates listed in these files. If even half of this data is accurate, we are facing an extinction-level threat. Dr. Vasquez, I am a patrol captain, not a policymaker. The Council has spoken. These files will be classified as human disinformation and sealed in the archives. My orders are to continue standard patrol duties and report any actual threats to Council security. After the communication ended, Elena sat alone in the abandoned research station. Around her, empty corridors and stripped laboratories bore witness to a species that had tried to warn their enemies about mutual destruction. The humans had possessed knowledge that could save the galaxy, but pride and prejudice had made it impossible for anyone to listen. Elena made copies of the data files using her personal equipment. She uploaded the information to secure servers and sent encrypted transmissions to colleagues throughout Council space. If the official channels would not act on the warnings, perhaps individual scientists could verify the threat independently. As she prepared to leave New Texas, Elena wondered where the humans were now. Had they fled far enough to escape what was coming? Or were they somewhere in the dark void, fighting the very entities they had tried to warn the galaxy about? The thought that humanity might be facing these horrors alone made her feel sick. In the empty research station, warning lights continued to blink on automated systems that had been running for 5 years without maintenance. They flashed their urgent patterns into the darkness, alerting no one to the danger approaching from beyond the rim. The galaxy continued its peaceful rotation, unaware that somewhere in the void between stars, an ancient hunger was awakening. The first signs appeared on the edge of Zenthari space. Long-range sensors detected massive gravitational anomalies approaching from the void between galaxies. Fleet Admiral Kethvar of the Zenthari Defense Force initially dismissed the readings as equipment malfunctions. The energy signatures were too large to represent anything known to Council science. Within days, the anomalies resolved into shapes that defied comprehension. Ships the size of small moons emerged from dark space, their hulls gleaming with an oily blackness that seemed to absorb light itself. Behind them came larger vessels, continent-sized platforms, bristling with weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. The formations stretched across light years of space in perfect geometric patterns that spoke of ancient intelligence and terrifying purpose. The Devourer fleet moved toward the outermost Zenthari colonies with mechanical precision. No communications came from the massive ships, no warnings or demands for surrender. They simply advanced like a tide of darkness, consuming everything in their path. Admiral Kethvar mobilized the Zenthari Armada's 5th Fleet to intercept the unknown vessels. 50,000 ships arranged themselves in traditional battle formations, confident that their superior numbers and advanced weaponry would overwhelm any threat. The Zenthari had conquered dozens of star systems using these same tactics. They had never encountered an enemy they could not defeat through sheer force. The engagement lasted less than an hour. Devourer weapons fired coherent energy beams that sliced through Zenthari shields and armor like tissue paper. Ships that had survived centuries of warfare simply ceased to exist when the alien weapons touched them. The few vessels that managed to return fire watched their most powerful weapons bounce harmlessly off the invaders' hull plating. In minutes, 50,000 Zenthari ships became expanding clouds of superheated plasma. Not a single Devourer vessel showed any sign of damage. On the Zenthari homeworld, High Counselor Zenthal watched the destruction through long-range sensors. The impossible had become reality. An enemy had appeared that could destroy their mightiest fleets without effort. Everything the Council knew about warfare had become obsolete in the span of a single battle. The Devourer advance continued without pause. They reached the first Zenthari colony world within hours of destroying the defending fleet. What happened next would haunt the survivors for generations. The mechanical entities did not invade or occupy the planet. Instead, they began systematic dismantlement. Massive harvesting ships descended into the atmosphere and began stripping away the biosphere layer by layer. Forests vanished into processing units that converted organic matter into raw materials. Oceans were drained and their contents separated into component elements. Mountains were carved away by mining beams that extracted useful minerals while discarding the rest. The planet's population of 2 billion Zenthari died not from weapons, fire, but from the complete destruction of their environment. Within days, a thriving world became a hollow shell, stripped of everything that could sustain life. The Devourers left behind only a barren rock drifting in space, its resources absorbed into their fleet's ever-growing mass. News of the disaster spread throughout Council space at faster-than-light speeds. Emergency sessions convened on every member world as leaders struggled to comprehend the magnitude of the threat. The insectoid HFY immediately recalled their exploration fleets and began fortifying their core systems. The crystalline Mordun activated defense networks that had not been used in thousands of years, but the Devourers did not slow their advance. After stripping the first world clean, they moved to the next system, then the next. Each victory made them stronger as they incorporated harvested materials into new ships and weapons. The mechanical entities grew like a cancer, consuming everything in their path while becoming more powerful with each meal. General Patricia Moore commanded the combined council forces that assembled to stop the invaders. She had studied every battle report and tactical analysis, searching for weaknesses in the Devourer strategy. What she found terrified her more than the enemy's overwhelming firepower. They learned from every engagement, Moore reported to the emergency council session. Our weapons, our tactics, our deployment patterns. After each battle, they adapt their defenses to counter whatever caused them damage. They are not just machines. They are a collective intelligence that improves with every world they consume. The Ocean delegate Thysica displayed holographic projections showing the invaders' advance pattern. At current rates of consumption, they will reach the core worlds within 6 months. Our combined fleets cannot match their firepower, and conventional tactics have proven completely ineffective. High Counselor Zenthal struggled to maintain his composure as reports flooded in from across Zenthari space. 12 more colonies had fallen in the past week. Each world had died the same way. Swift destruction of defending forces followed by systematic harvesting of all planetary resources. The death toll was approaching 50 billion and climbing exponentially. "What about the human warnings?" asked a junior Ocean counselor. Dr. Vasquez's discovery on New Texas contained tactical recommendations for fighting these entities. Perhaps we should review those files. The suggestion created an immediate uproar in the chamber. The council had spent 5 years celebrating their success in containing the human threat. Admitting that humans had been right about the Devourers would mean acknowledging that their greatest triumph had been their greatest mistake. Zenthal rejected the proposal with obvious disgust. "We will not legitimize human propaganda by treating it as fact. The Zenthari military will find a solution to this crisis without relying on the lies of a vanished species." But the Zenthari military was dying. Their most elite formations were being systematically destroyed by an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. The HFY fared no better when their turn came. Swarm tactics that had overwhelmed countless enemies proved useless against Devourer point defense systems that could track and destroy millions of targets simultaneously. One by one, the great civilizations of the galaxy began to fall. The proud Mordun crystalline networks went dark as entire star systems were stripped of the exotic matter that powered their technology. The ancient Ocean trade routes became graveyards filled with the wreckage of merchant fleets that had tried to evacuate refugees from doomed worlds. General Moore found herself commanding fewer ships each day, as the combined Council forces were ground down by an enemy that never seemed to weaken. Her staff had calculated the mathematical progression of their losses. At current rates, organized resistance would collapse within 3 months. "We need help," Moore told her aide, Colonel Frank Bennett, during a brief respite between battles. "The humans were right about everything. They warned us this was coming and we drove them away for it. Now we are paying the price for our arrogance." Bennett highlighted sections of the recovered human data on his tactical display. "Ma'am, according to these files, the humans had developed specific countermeasures for Devourer technology, weapon frequencies that could penetrate their shields, tactical doctrines designed to exploit their systematic behavior patterns. If we could contact them somehow?" Moore laughed bitterly. "Contact them where? They disappeared into the void 5 years ago. For all we know, the Devourers found them first. Humanity might already be extinct, consumed by the very threat they tried to warn us about. Outside the command ship's viewports, the galaxy burned. Worlds that had hosted life for millions of years were being reduced to empty husks. Civilizations that had endured since before Earth's sun ignited were vanishing into the mechanical maw of an ancient hunger. The Council had achieved their goal of galactic peace by driving away the chaotic humans. Now they were learning that sometimes chaos was exactly what the universe needed to survive. The Devourer fleet had reached the core worlds when the impossible happened. Ships began appearing in empty space without any detectable means of arrival. They materialized like ghosts, their hulls scarred and modified beyond recognition. The bulk vessels bore no resemblance to the sleek designs that had once marked human engineering. These were warships forged in the fires of desperate survival. Admiral Tony Blake stood on the command bridge of the UES Defiance, watching tactical displays that showed Devourer formations surrounding the Osean homeworld. 5 years in dark space had changed him. His hair had gone completely white, and surgical scars covered half his face where Devourer weapons had nearly killed him during the early encounters beyond the rim. But his eyes still burned with the determination that had carried humanity through. "It's darkest hour. Signal all ships," Blake commanded. "Begin Phase 1 of Operation Homecoming. Target the harvesting platforms first. We save the people, then we kill the machines." Lieutenant Commander Alex Turner coordinated the attack from his position at the tactical station. His fingers moved across controls that would have been alien to pre-Exodus humanity. The technology was a hybrid of human innovation and desperate adaptation, weapons and systems developed through 5 years of constant warfare against an enemy that had destroyed countless galaxies. The human fleet struck the Devourer forces with surgical precision. Ships that could phase through normal space-time appeared inside enemy formations and unleashed weapons that turned the mechanical giants into expanding clouds of superheated gas. Devourer vessels that had shrugged off every Council weapon found themselves vulnerable to human technology that operated on principles the ancient machines had never encountered. Captain Michelle Grant led her strike team aboard the flagship UES Vengeance as they materialized directly inside a Devourer command ship. Her assault troops moved through the mechanical corridors like deadly shadows, their armor incorporating stealth technology reverse-engineered from captured enemy systems. They planted charges designed to disrupt the quantum matrices that powered Devourer consciousness, turning the massive ships into lifeless hulks. The battle for the Osean homeworld lasted 6 hours. When it ended, debris from hundreds of Devourer vessels drifted in space around a planet that still lived. For the first time since the invasion began, an enemy fleet had been completely destroyed without losing a single world to harvesting. On the surface of Osea Prime, the surviving population watched human ships descend through the atmosphere. Evacuation transports began loading refugees while medical teams provided aid to the wounded. The humans worked with mechanical efficiency, saving lives without ceremony or expectation of gratitude. Osean Prime Minister Kethmore met with Admiral Blake in the ruins of what had once been the planetary capital. The crystalline being's form flickered with patterns that indicated deep shame and confusion. "Why?" Kethmore asked through the translation matrix. "Why do you help us?" "The Council drove your species into exile. We threatened you with extinction. You owe us nothing." Blake looked out over the devastated city where human medics were treating Osean wounded. "Because it was the right thing to do. That is what makes us human. We do not abandon people to die, even if those people wanted us dead." The human fleet moved from system to system, appearing wherever Devourer forces threatened surviving populations. Each battle demonstrated the vast technological gap that 5 years of desperate warfare had created. Human ships fought with the fury of a species that had spent half a decade staring extinction in the face and refusing to blink. Captain Dave Wilson commanded the reconnaissance force that tracked Devourer movements throughout the galaxy. His ships used sensors that could detect quantum signatures across multiple dimensions, technology that had been developed to survive in the chaotic space between galaxies. The humans had learned to see threats that other species could not even imagine. "Admiral, we have confirmed Devourer retreat from 7 sectors," Wilson reported during a fleet-wide communication. "They are consolidating their forces around the galactic core. Estimated enemy strength, 12 million vessels. Our force strength, 800,000 ships." Blake studied the tactical projections with satisfaction. The numbers still favored the enemy, but these were not the impossible odds humanity had faced at the Council ultimatum. 5 years of constant warfare had taught them that victory was not about having more ships. Victory was about having better ships operated by people who refused to surrender. General Patricia Moore found herself fighting alongside the humans she had once considered impossible allies. Her remaining Council forces had been integrated into human battle groups, learning tactics that seemed to defy military logic. Human commanders led from the front, taking risks that should have been suicidal, but somehow worked because of their intimate knowledge of Devourer psychology. "They think like machines," explained Commander Lisa Chen, a human tactical specialist who had survived more battles than most soldiers fought in entire careers. "The Devourers optimize everything for efficiency. They cannot comprehend strategies based on sacrifice, desperation, or pure stubborn refusal to accept defeat. That gives us advantages they cannot calculate." The final battle took place at the galactic core, where the surviving Devourer fleet had established a massive harvesting operation around the central black hole. They were drawing energy directly from the galaxy's heart, preparing for the next phase of their endless consumption cycle. Admiral Blake led the human fleet in a direct assault that every tactical computer declared suicidal. His ships dove into the gravitational chaos around the black hole, using the extreme conditions to mask their approach until they were too close for the Devourers to respond effectively. "All ships, this is Admiral Blake," his voice carried across. Every human vessel as they plunged into the maelstrom. 5 years ago, they told us we were too dangerous to exist freely. Today, we prove them right. For humanity, for the galaxy, for everyone who refused to kneel to ancient tyranny. Attack. The battle raged for 18 hours. Human ships danced through gravity wells that would have crushed normal vessels, their crews trained by years of fighting in the impossible conditions of deep space. They destroyed Devourer vessels by the thousands, each victory bought with human blood and determination. When the last enemy ship died in the fires of the galactic core, the threat that had consumed hundreds of galaxies finally ended. The mechanical entities that had brought extinction to countless civilizations were nothing more than radioactive debris drifting around a black hole. Admiral Blake stood on the observation deck of his flagship, looking out at the stars that still shone, because humanity had chosen to save them. Around him, the galaxy slowly began to heal from wounds that had seemed fatal just days before. The communication came from Osean Prime, where the surviving council members had gathered to witness the end of their civilization's greatest crisis. Prime Minister Kethmore's message was simple and direct. "Admiral Blake, The Council wishes to express our gratitude and extend an offer of alliance. Humanity has earned its place among the stars. We hope you will return and help us rebuild what was lost. Blake read the message twice before activating his response transmitter. His words would be heard across every surviving world in the galaxy. Prime Minister, 5 years ago you told us the galaxy would function perfectly without humans. You were wrong. But we learned something important in the dark between stars. We do not need your permission to exist. We do not need your approval to thrive. And we do not need your galaxy to call home. He paused, watching distant stars that called to him with promises of new worlds and fresh adventures. Humanity thanks you for teaching us that we are stronger alone than we ever were as your subjects. The galaxy is yours to rebuild. Use this second chance wisely. As for us, the universe is vast and full of wonders you cannot imagine. We have work to do among the stars. The human fleet began departing even before the transmission ended. They faded back into the void like ghosts, leaving behind a galaxy that finally understood what it had lost when it chose fear over friendship. The Council would spend the next 1,000 years rebuilding their shattered worlds, always wondering if the humans would return. Some hoped they would, others feared they might. But everyone remembered the lesson written in fire across the cosmos. Sometimes the greatest mercy is justice, delivered by those who owed you nothing but gave you everything. Anyway,